Good Sunday afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to yet another Southern Oregon Weather Weekend update. I'll start by reviewing the month so far in terms of precipitation and temperatures relative to normal. We'll talk about our 7-day forecast, and then we'll discuss what our teleconnections are saying for the end of the month, and then looking into June. So first, here are temperature departures from normal for the month so far. Not significantly above or below average anywhere in the state, and definitely not over southwest Oregon. So it's been a pretty pleasant month in that regard. Also, precipitation has been fairly average over our area. Coastal areas have been wetter, and the east side has maybe been a little bit drier, but for the Rogue Valley and southwest Oregon, generally pretty close to average, which is a welcome sight given the relatively dry winter that we had. So let's look at our current radar imagery. As of 2:30 in the afternoon, here north of us along the Rogue-Umpqua Divide are some showers that are currently moving away from Medford and Ashland. Those produce some thunder and some lightning. Part of the reason we've seen thunderstorms is that we've been under this moist southerly flow, and also there's been some daytime heating, a lot of sun breaks, a lot of opportunity for the sun to heat the ground and produce more convection. So that's why we've been seeing some more thunderstorms this afternoon. Our showers are going to hang around for a little bit. We'll get into that in a moment. I'm showing you the PNA index here because the forecast is kind of going to mirror the evolution of the PNA here over the next couple weeks. So I want to start off by noting the negative PNA anomalies we're seeing right now. That corresponds pretty well to our current cooler and wetter conditions. You can see, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, that the PNA is going to trend positive over the next week or so, and that's going to lead to some warmer and drier conditions, followed by, once again, possibly some cooler and wetter conditions by the end of the month. So I just wanted to give you that overview before we jump into why all of this is going to happen. So here's the current GEFS ensemble 500 millibar map for Sunday afternoon. You can see here's the low pressure system that's been giving us these showers and thunderstorms. You can see we're in southerly flow right now. That's helping to produce those thunderstorms. And this area of low pressure is going to hang around for a little while. It corresponds pretty well to MJO Phase 3, which is where we're at right now. Here's the signal for Phase 3 in May. You can see it roughly lines up with what we're seeing. Maybe the actual pattern is displaced a little bit to the west, with this ridge farther out over the Gulf of Alaska. But in general, what we're seeing it roughly lines up with MJO Phase 2. Some hint of troughing along the west coast, some hint of ridging along the east, so you can see the resemblance there. Here's what the Weather Channel is calling for over the next week going forward. So here are thunderstorms for today, as we've been seeing. Showers continue on Monday, then we have a little bit of clearing on Tuesday and Wednesday, followed by a possible return to showers on Thursday and Friday, then clearing once again for the weekend. So let's see if the models and our teleconnections reflect the Weather Channel's forecast. Well, here's a loop of the GEFS ensemble over the next week. These blue colors at the beginning are our showers. They're continuing on Monday. The blue colors stay around into Thursday and Friday, and then these orange colors start to creep in by the end of the week. So this is basically telling us that this week on the whole could have some cooler and cloudier times, followed by some more sun and possibly warming temperatures for the weekend. Here is a loop of the GFS, so this is an operational model as opposed to the ensemble that mixes a bunch of different model runs together. This is also a loop of the next week. You can see our showers right now on Monday, then some clearing, then a possible chance for showers Thursday and Friday, then more clearing for the weekend. So I don't think our shower activity for Thursday is going to be very significant. If anything, models have been backing off on that system, and it looks like we're mainly going to get a shot of cooler air, dropping highs maybe into the low 60s for Thursday and Friday, but not too much more in the way of rainfall. I think the main shower activity we'll see is today and then tomorrow. So here's another way that we can look at the MJO. This is a outgoing long wave radiation anomaly time series. So it's showing us areas that are cloudier and areas that are not as cloudy. So the cloudy areas correspond to thunderstorm activity here in the Indian Ocean, and then moving over toward Australia. You can see the longitude here along the x-axis. And right now we're in phase 3, as I mentioned before. So and these blue colors indicate that there's a lot of cloudiness, so a lot of thunderstorms over this area of the Indian Ocean. That corresponds to MJO phase 3. You can see it's supposed to move gradually toward phases 4 and 5, and we'll talk about what that means. Here's MJO phase 4. You can see it's kind of a cooler and wetter signal for us. And then here's MJO phase 5, which is more of a mixed bag. You can see a hint of ridging start to creep in. So what does this indicate? Well, it tells me that, as we talked about at the beginning of the video, that our forecast is going to mirror the evolution of the PNA index, the Pacific North American index. You can see we start out negative and then we move positive, and that lines up very well with the MJO moving from phase 4, which is a cooler and wetter signal, into phase 5, which is slightly warmer and drier. Also, the models agree that this is going to happen. Here is day 10 on all of the all 3 of the main ensembles. Here we have the American, the European, and the Canadian. They all want to build some kind of ridge over the Pacific Northwest. So that lines up well with what I'm seeing in the PNA and the Madden-Julian oscillation. If we take a look at our MJO RMM plot, we can see that depicted another way. We can see the MJO continues to progress through phases 4 and 5 toward 6 and 7. So if that happens, that's also an argument for ridging along the west coast. That doesn't necessarily mean that we would be completely dry, though. Here is the GFS for next Monday, so a little bit more than a week out. It's trying to bring in some kind of weak system. Now, it's not particularly strong, and most of the models take this precipitation farther north as the ridge really kind of builds in over our area. It's worth noting, though, that the start to next week could possibly see some showers. That's also reflected in the Weather Channel's forecast, so just wanted to make a note of that. Even though we are moving the PNA more positive, and we are possibly going to see these warmer MJO phases, we could still see a last parting shot of precipitation before things warm up further into week 2. So you can see at the very end, after week 2, going into week 3, the end of the month, the beginning of June, the PNA falls again. And once again, that corresponds very well with the other teleconnections that we're looking at. Here the models are reflecting that. They back the ridging away from the west coast. There's just a hint of troughing. They suggest that there's going to be more ridging over the central part of the U.S. and maybe the Great Lakes. There's some differences in the models here. But for our area, at least, this is not a particularly hot signal. And once again, the MJO is going to line up with that idea as well. We see that as we move forward in time, 2 weeks out from today, that this signal for phases 2 and 3 reemerges. And that's kind of a pattern that we've been seeing over the last couple months, where this MJO phase 2 and 3 signal is much stronger, and then it kind of peters out as it moves farther along. There's evidence that this time we are going to see maybe a more robust phase 4 and 5 and 6, but I don't think it's going to continue into 7 and 8. I think at this point it's going to loop back into phases 2 and 3, and that means that we could kind of go through this cooler and wetter pattern all over again. And here is the correlation in June for MJO phases 2 and 3. So we're talking now 2.5, 3 weeks out. By that time we'll be in June. The calendar will say June, and those phases are cooler for June. So speaking of June, I wanted to give you just a brief look into the latest trends. It's kind of continued to be a mixed bag. At one point, the models and the teleconnections were lining up to suggest a cooler and wetter June, but once again, those signals have started to become more mixed. On the one hand, we have seen these ENSO regions, especially region 3.4, cooling. That's a cooler signal for our area in June. On the other hand, we've seen some warming in the PMM region, the Pacific Meridional mode. That's a warmer and drier signal. So there's kind of a mixed bag here. Also, our angular momentum forecast, according to the CFSV2, has continued to trend farther positive. And that also is perhaps a warmer and drier signal for our area. I say perhaps because here's the correlation for the June angular momentum. You can see it strongly favors a ridge over British Columbia, the coastal regions here. But there's a hint of troughing into California and possibly into the desert southwest. And there's a question as to how far north this ridging sets up, and then whether we can come under the influence of this southern trough here. That all assumes the angular momentum is going to be positive. Given the swings in the CFSV2 forecast that I've seen over the past week, I'm not putting too much stock in that forecast, but we'll just have to see what happens. So that was a lot of information. Here is the summary. Once again, the forecast is roughly going to mirror the way the Pacific North American index is going. We have a cooler start, cooler week 1. Showers continue on Monday. We have some clearing on Tuesday and Wednesday. A very modest chance for showers on Thursday. And then your weekend is going to be a little warmer and drier. For week 2, we're going to continue that warmer and drier trend as the PNA rises and the MJO moves through phases 5 and 6. Those are warmer phases for our area. And then in week 3, toward the end of the month, we could see a return to cooler and wetter conditions because the MJO looks like it's going to loop right back into those cooler phases that we've just been through, phases 2 and 3. Once again, June continues to be kind of a mixed bag. There's some mixed signals as far as sea surface temperatures go. However, the MJO does suggest that we could nevertheless see a cooler start to the month, even though the waters off the west coast have warmed quite a bit over the last few months. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to set your notifications so you can receive the next update as soon as it arrives, and please leave a like if you enjoyed the content for today.